Hello everyone, I am Matt Williamson at Williamson NFL. How's everyone doing? Another beautiful day in the Berg. Summer is upon us, and you guys flooded me with good mailbag questions yesterday, and they kept coming after I recorded, so I've got 4 or 5 here that I thought were, worthy of their own podcast just to keep this thing rolling. So mailbag part 2, here we go. And this one came in after I recorded, and Michael Bradley asks, Spencer Anderson went from possible starting center to question mark, backup right tackle, question mark. And I found this really interesting is I've been telling you guys every step of the way, don't forget about Spencer Anderson. I think they really like Spencer Anderson. If there would have been injuries on the O-line, maybe would have seen Spencer Anderson. At training camp last year, he kept getting more and more on his plate, and all the stuff I saw, plus the stuff I heard behind the scenes was, we really like this guy, and I'm not saying he's a starter, but I mean, I think he is going to make the team. And all of a sudden, and we touched on this yesterday, but I didn't bring Anderson's name up, but it came up with McCormick, was the interior of the O-line now, especially if they cross-train McCormick at both guards and centers, as I recommended, I don't know if they will or not, is pretty crowded. Anderson can play all 3 of those positions as well. And again, I don't think that bodes well for Herbig. But Anderson did play some right tackle in camp. I'd have to go back and see if he played any preseason snaps at right tackle. I bet the answer is yes. He's not the prototype, but he's tough and smart, and I think he could certainly get you out of a game. And I also know the other name to not forget here is Dylan Cook, who is truly a tackle. And I think he is comfortable playing left and right. We know Dan Moore is not comfortable playing right, but he better get used to playing some right if he's going to be the third guy off the bench here. And I also wonder, with his contract expiring, could Moore, like Herbig, be on the move, for a mid-late round pick, something like that? I mean, he's not great, but he's young and he's got a lot of starting left tackle experience. That has a lot of value in the league. So I wonder, I think this is something to just file in the back of your noodle, or, I'll look definitely at mini camps and things like that. But is Anderson being cross-trained at not only center and guard, but right tackle as well? Because again, I think he's going to make the team. I think he's a good player. The more you can do, the better, of course. And he showed that in camp last year that he can do a lot. I mean, maybe he's a jack of all trades, master of none, but that keeps you active on game day when injuries inevitably set in, and they've been really, really lucky in that regard on their O-line. He'll get playing time, in some way, shape, or form. So don't forget about Cook, and certainly don't forget about Anderson. And you wonder, where does that leave Herbig? I mean, if he's not a great scheme fit, kind of a heavy plotter, and maybe where does that leave Moore? And I do think, and this is something we talked about yesterday too, that under Omar Khan, it seems pretty apparent that they want one extra O-lineman, and they ended up trading Dotson and Green and guys like that. I wonder if that's going to be a regular occurrence. And the drafting of McCormick seems to think that it will be, because O-line's a shortage. When in doubt, grab something that the league is short on, and you should be able to turn that into something, and have your pick and always have depth. So this was an interesting angle. I had never really thought of Anderson as, even if it's just an emergency standpoint, of maybe he can get you out of the game at right tackle, or maybe he's the true backup. And I think it's possible. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NBA, and NHL playoffs. Get all the latest stats, scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Our buddy Joey Bag of Donuts asks, if Russell Wilson does get benched during the season, do you think he'll take that well, or would the Steelers have to cut him? I'd be shocked if a cutting occurred, and frankly, I don't know the personality, the makeup. I mean, he, by all accounts, has been a model citizen leader since he's been here, doing all the right things. He's been around the block and he knows how to play that game. And I'm not even saying he's, acting. I think he's, excited about this. I think he's very aware of his legacy has been tarnished since he left Seattle, and maybe he's not a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. And frankly, when he got traded to the Broncos, I remember being asked, is he a Hall of Famer right now if he doesn't play again? And I thought, yes. But now I'm not sure because these couple of years hurt that and his legacy as a whole. That being said, would he be willing to put his ego aside and not cause issues if he's not the best quarterback on the team? That's when the change would get made, is if he's not the best quarterback on the team. Now, if something, we're really getting ahead of ourselves, of course, but it's an interesting scenario. If something were to occur sooner than later, that Fields is our guy, that maybe they even figure that out in camp. I don't think they will. I think that Wilson will be the opening day starter. Or if Wilson misses the first, second and third game of the year after getting hurt and Fields shines and Tomlin decides we're just going with the hot hand and the younger guy, we could write a lot of stories of where Fields sees the field and doesn't leave, Now, if it was before the trade deadline, I would think somebody out there would give you a pick for Wilson because he doesn't cost any money. There's going to be quarterback injuries. I'm sure you could turn him into something, that the team could rent Russell Wilson. That's better than renting Joe Flacco last year or something like that. If it's after the trade deadline, would you really cut him? I don't know. That seems extreme to me. But if your season is shot and it's, if you're out of the playoff race, which rarely happens around here, as you guys know, and he's a problem child or isn't accepting it well, I guess it's possible, but I don't really see it. Eli Krebs asked, do you see Pat Freiermuth's role expanding in the Arthur Smith offense? And the answer is very, very, very much so. I talked about this a lot before they even hired an offensive coordinator. My hunch, one of the things that they were looking for when they were, thinking about who to hire as the OC is we have to get Freiermuth back more involved. And the Falcons definitely do that. The Titans definitely do that. What Freiermuth, I know there's a little bit injury stuff there, but his usage last year to me was almost criminal. And I'm not saying he's Travis Kelce or a superstar, but he's the 10th best tight end in the league. And I think they're going to give him a contract extension. And as it stands right now, he looks like the number 2 receiver on the team. But I can't imagine that he doesn't get a lot more targets and maybe double the amount of targets he got last year. I don't know that he'll get to 100, but I think 80 is more what he's worth. And neither one of these guys is great throwing to the middle of the field, but doesn't mean it won't happen. Smith does scheme up the tight ends well. I don't think they'll look at him like he's Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts really is a vertical guy and runs wide receiver routes. He detaches against corners. He's a unique player, and he's fast, and he's special, and he was a top 10 pick. Freiermuth won't be doing those things regularly, but I definitely think his role expands. Another really good question from Otto. Early indications are that the 2025 draft should have a decent number of solid defensive line prospects. Do future year projected classes ever influence how a team focuses its current year draft selections? I think the answer is mostly no, 90% no. First of all, because NFL stands for not for long. And if you're doing those type of things, Pittsburgh aside, but if you're the GM doing those type of things in most towns, you might be setting the next GM and coaching staff up as opposed to yourself, so that's one of the great things about the Steelers' continuity and the job security is you can let long-term plans come together, as opposed to just living for today and trying to keep your head above water and not get fired. I do think people are very aware of what the upcoming quarterback classes are. Is this a good one? Is this a bad one? Is there going to be a lot of potential first-round picks? Everyone knew who May and Williams were this time last year, of course. But this time when he was coming out, everyone was talking about tanking for Tua. They weren't talking about Burrow. Nobody even knew who Burrow was. Or, Herbert, okay, but everyone was tanking for Tua, and no one knew who Wentz was at this stage of the game. I mean, there's a lot of dudes that are on the radar, of course, but are not being mocked in these super, super early mock drafts, anywhere near the first round. I mean, Jaden Daniels was not in that category either. That being said, Otto, I did notice that, and we'll see if it holds true. I mean, we're projecting the future a lot here, but it sure does look like this is going to be, as it stands in May, a really good defensive tackle draft. You said D lineman. I wasn't really even looking at the edge guys because I'm looking through Steeler glasses here. And I've been kind of saying all along, I think next year, quarterback aside, could be when you really invest in a Cam Hayward replacement. Your first round pick, continue to build the trenches, but on the defensive side of the ball, I think has a really good chance to be a defensive tackle. Wide receiver might cloud that, but they almost always draft day 2 wide receivers and have had great success doing that. But I really have noticed that the minimal draft prep I've done for next year, and trust me, I start reading up on these guys, and I just want to know, like, when Saturday rolls around in the fall and Tennessee's play in Nebraska, who are the prospects? Like, who are the big name guys? Who are the names I should know? And there certainly looks like a lot of defensive tackles in all shapes and sizes. And I doubt the Steelers, because it's a hard thing to hang your hat on, looked at it that way of this class isn't good, next year's is going to be great. But I'm sure it's crossed their mind. And obviously all the area scouts will tell you, like Michigan has 2 highly potential first-round defensive tackles. Well, your Michigan scout definitely has told Omar and his bosses that, hey, I mean, the D tackles in my area are really good. Corners aren't, or the linebackers are, or the receivers aren't. Subject to change, of course, but I do think it's promising, and I'm way getting ahead of ourselves, but that's fun. I mean, that's what May's all about. That D tackles in next year's draft look very, very strong. And I think that's good news for the Steelers. I don't know that they lined that up on purpose. I bet they didn't, to be very honest. All right, good stuff. Again, if you guys flood me with mailbag questions, I'll answer them. So it doesn't have to be on mailbag day. Just tweet me whenever. Keep leaving comments on my YouTube page, and the YouTube stuff has been great for this podcast, and appreciate all the kind words too. So take care. Over and out.